Good morning, my YouTube viewers. It's Crystal here. It's early in the morning, so I've turned my camera off so you don't see me in my early in the morning clothing and what I look like in the morning. I wanted to make another video for you, and the reason why is I wanted to go through and give a comparison of the UK versus the US coronavirus. And the reason why is because the US now has its own variant coming out of California, and then the UK has had the variant for a while, and now what they're saying is that this variant is more deadly than the previous virus. So they're saying that for every 10 people who die from the previous virus, maybe 13 or 14 people will die from the new virus. And so I don't know if they gave you 10 out of 1,000. I'm not sure exactly if it was 10 out of 1,000, but yeah, they said that. So they said that this new virus is actually more deadly than the previous virus. And so since we've got a variant coming out of California now, and we've got this UK variant that's all over and is a lot more infectious and is more deadly, I thought, well, maybe this is a good time to go over my program where I compare the UK versus the US. And so I'm going to be making a blog post on this as well. And when I make the blog post, then I will give you the link to the program. So you'll get the link to the program on the blog post. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and get started on this code review. I had to make some minor changes to the code, and the reason why is because Brazil had put an extra day in there, and because Brazil had put an extra day in there, it caused my program not to work. And so what I had to do is I had to do some slicing. So it's always a good thing. I'm always having to change and modify my program depending upon what these countries do to the spreadsheet, depending on what the countries do to the CSV file. So we'll go ahead and get started on this. And since I haven't reviewed this code in a while, we'll go ahead and do a full code review, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about it. So we took the code from this website, Our World of Data, and yesterday I updated the website, so we're using the most current data as of yesterday. And so we wrote the program on Google Colab, which is a free online Jupyter notebook, and I saved the program onto my GitHub account, but the program wouldn't come up. So now I'm on Jupyter Notebook Viewer, and so, or I'm on NB Viewer, so so you can actually see it, so you can see the program. So after I made the program on Google Colab, and I'm showing it on NB Viewer, I imported the libraries that I was going to need to start out with. So I imported pandas and numpy. So anytime you make a Python program, those are two libraries that you need to import automatically, because they're two libraries that you're going to be using. And then I loaded the data set on the NB Viewer. And so you can see that they've got every day they have an increase in rows, because every day they update it. So we're using the most current CSV file as of yesterday, But what I found out is Brazil went and added a day, which caused problems with my CSV file. But I'll show you how I got around that. So you can see some information on the file. We've got a few objects and lots of floats. And we've got our date time. So what we did was we converted the date to number using the date time. Train date equals PD to date time. Train date errors equals coerce. Train date num equals train date dot dt strip time. And then train. So you can see here that we have converted the date to number. And I'll show you here because it's if it comes up. So you can see now the date is the number. Now what we did was we wanted to see all the countries represented in this CSV file. So I made a chart. I made a program, some code, so it'll show you all the countries that are actually listed in the file. And basically what happens is we created a list, and all of the countries that are not already in the list get put in the list. So we now have 193 countries in that list. When I first started making the program, it was 192 countries. So they've gone in and put in an extra country, but I don't know what country that is. But that's just telling you that another country has decided to come in and participate in these statistics. So when I first started making the program, it was 92. Now we've got 93. Now what we want to do is we want to get the latest date, because it's a bit awkward because one of the countries, they put an extra date in there, and I was able to use this code to get the extra date. But then Brazil went through, put an extra date in there, and it didn't work. So I had to do a slice. So this is what we're going to do. So we said we had to import our date time library. And so we had to get today's date, which was yesterday's date, January 22nd. And then we had to get yesterday. So we had to take that date and we had to subtract one day from it. And it was January 21st. So January 21st was the day that we were working with. We had to get the last date, which was max, so that was 22nd. We had to type out what kind of date it was, and it was a timestamp. We had to timestamp yesterday. And then we used this program to determine whether they were going to use last date or yesterday. And so I couldn't get it to work. It said if last date is greater than yesterday, last date equals yesterday. So it should have said yesterday, but it didn't. And I couldn't get it to work. If train date, it said that last date equals train date equals last date, and it was last date. And then if last date was greater than yesterday, then last date should have been yesterday, but it wasn't. So it didn't filter it out very well, because you can see, well, it did say 2021-01-21, so it did work with Zimbabwe. Oh, so we had a ZMB, that's Zambia, and you had a So it did work. It said 01 2021 01 21. So it did work as the last date, but for some reason it didn't work with Brazil, and we'll get into that. That's something that I don't understand, because it said it should have been last date. Last date was yesterday, and it worked. The Brazil, it slipped through the net, and we'll see that. So now we've got a graphical representation of the new cases. We've got a lot of new cases. Graphical representation of the new deaths. Got lots of new deaths as well. And then we've got the location. So you can see that towards the end of the chart, you've got a lot of new cases. And I think that's to do with the UK and the United States. And then we've got new deaths, and you can see that in the UK and the United States, you've got a lot of new deaths. So now we've got a chart of the continent, and you can see that most of the cases are in North America, and that's because they're doing lots of testing. If you don't do lots of testing, you're not going to have lots of new cases. And then I was looking at a YouTube video, and it said that a lot of people are not being tested because they can't afford it. And that's the truth. Is if you are self-employed and nobody's going to be paying you, and you get tested and they tell you that you got the virus and you have to self-isolate, then that means you're going to lose money. So what people are doing is they're just not getting tested. And in my situation, if I don't go to work, I don't get paid any money. So yeah, it's not in, if people are not being given any money to stay home, it's not going to be in their best interest to stay home. And so a lot of them are just not being tested. But I have been tested. I was required to be tested. And whenever I got tested, they said that I didn't have these antibodies they were looking for. And I did get my injection because I suppose I could have said I didn't want to get an injection, but because of my work situation, I decided that not to make waves and just go ahead and get the injection anyway. And my arm hurt for a few days. And then one day last week, I had a sore throat and I was nauseous. And that was about it, really. So hopefully they don't put too many toxic substances in these injections they give us. Because, like when you get the injection, and they're actually giving you the virus. When you get the injection, they're giving you a very tiny dose of the virus. And so that's why you get sick when you get the injection, because you've had a tiny dose of the virus. So I hope they don't put too many toxic substances in the virus in the injection, because I got the injection sort of because I had to. Okay, so now we've got new deaths, and you can see most of the deaths are in the North America, because they're doing the most testing. So now what we have is we have a heat map. So if you like heat maps and you want to determine how the independent variables fit in with the dependent variables, you've got all that information to hand. So now we've got the UK. And on the UK, the thing about the UK is this variant that we have coming out of the UK is a lot more infectious. And now they're finding out, oops, I'm not doing this. Now it says it's not responding. I didn't do this. Now it says it's not responding, so it won't let me stop. Now it's stopped, but I'm going to have to go back all the way to the top where I was. Okay. So now we're back in the UK. And what I wanted to do, unfortunately, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to zoom it in. I'm going to zoom it to 75%, so hopefully you can see it a little bit better. Because what I wanted to show you is they've got lots of statistics here, but the UK doesn't give a lot of these statistics. And because the UK doesn't give a lot of these statistics, it's a little bit harder to tell. So, we've got new vaccinations. We've got the Dayton Human Development Index. Life expectancy is 81 years old. So that means I've got like close to 21 more years on the earth plane. Hospital beds per 1,000, 2.54. Hand washing facilities, male smokers, female smokers, diabetes, cardiovascular death rate, extreme poverty, GDP per capita. They don't say whether that's dollars or pounds, but I'm going to assume it's we're not going to make any assumptions. We'll just say GDP per capita is close to 40,000. We don't know what the unit of currency is. To say age 70 or older, 65 or older, median age, population density, population stringency index. So now they're talking about new vaccinations, total vaccinations, tests, new tests. Okay, it says total test, new test. Now, what would have been good if they had included their hospital admissions? And so if they had included their hospital admissions, then I would be able to do more work, because it would have been interesting to see how many hospital admissions they had based upon the new cases, but they don't give that information about their hospital admissions. It'd be nice if they did. Weekly, all this information. They're not giving that information. If they did give that information, it would be great because I could do more predictions. And so, again, and I look at this every single day, and new cases. So I look at it every single day to see how we're going in this pandemic. And it seems like we're not getting any better, especially in the UK. So now let's look at the UK new cases. So you can see that we've got a decrease in the new cases, but it's still a lot. And then yesterday we had an increase because every single day there's this. If you go into Google, they have a chart that you can look at, and then it will tell you how many new cases you've had. I don't look at the new deaths. You can look at the new deaths if you want to, but I don't. And we're not getting any better, we're getting worse. And you can see that even though we sort of have a bit of a decrease in the new cases, we have an increase in the new deaths. And the reason why is because the UK variant of the virus is more deadly than the original virus. So now we're going to look at the United States. Let's see what information the United States is giving us. Now, the thing about the United States is that they've got a new variant coming out of California. So the UK's got a variant coming out of London, and the US has a variant coming out of California. Let's come over here to the very end. Let's see what information they're willing to give. Life expectancy is about 79. So your life expectancy in the US is going to be about 2 years less than the UK. And they say hospital beds per 1,000. They have more hospital beds in the US than they do in the UK. But the US has a different health system, because in the US you have to pay for your medical treatment, but in the UK you don't. In the UK, medical treatment comes out of your national insurance contributions. Talk about smokers, diabetes, cardiovascular, death rate, extreme poverty, GDP per capita. The GDP per capita in the US is more than the UK. Age 70 or older. Median age is 38. So the median age in the UK is, I think, 40 or 41, but the median age in the US is 36. No, sorry, 38. So going into the vaccinations, so we can always go through and predict the vaccinations now that they are giving vaccinations. We can predict the number of vaccinations, but now what they're saying is they want to give these vaccinations to the poor countries as well as the rich countries, because they say that this is a global pandemic and it's not enough to just vaccinate the rich countries. You need to vaccinate the poor countries too, because the only way that you're going to eradicate this disease is to vaccinate everybody. So now they're talking about giving vaccinations to the poor countries. And then they're also talking about, something called vaccine tourism. So they've got a situation where the rich people are going to Florida to get vaccinated. And so now Florida is going to have to do something about that to make sure that they don't have any vaccine tourism in their state. So you've got a situation where the people who are poor are not getting the vaccinations, and the people who are more well off are getting their vaccinations. And then in addition to that, you have a lot of racism issues, because in the United States, people of color have been traditionally used as experimentation, and so people of color are not necessarily that keen on getting the vaccinations, because historically America has experimented on those people and they don't want to be experimented on anymore, which is understandable. So we're going through the new tests, and you see they're not giving information on hospital admissions either. If we could find a country where they're providing information on hospital admissions, then that would be great. I could predict on that. But so far, I've not really looked that hard, but I've not found a country that has hospital admissions. So let's look at the new cases. So they've got 188 or almost 189,000 new cases. So they're testing. So this is the U.S. new cases and the U.S. new deaths. So what we're going to do is we're just going to skip on down here, because we've had I put a lot of different countries in my spreadsheet, in my program. So we're just going to move on down here. We're not going to go through every single country, because we've gone through this before. So now you can see, you can compare the new cases per million to the new deaths. So you can see that a lot more new cases than new deaths. So that's good. And that was globally. Let me just look here. So this is your global. This is your US. We've got a lot more new cases than new deaths, and the new cases seem to be leveling off. And in the UK, you've got a lot more new cases than new deaths, but the new cases seem to be decreasing, but the new deaths are slowly increasing as well. And so this was Brazil. This was the last one that I tested. So I think I'm going to go through whenever I finish this, and I'm going to remove the Brazil one. But you can see that Brazil has a lot of new cases. So I think what I might do is I might take Brazil off. So now what we're going to do is we're going to compare the countries, and we're only going to talk about the US and the UK, but I'm going to show you Brazil to show you what they did. We'll come back up here to Brazil just so you can see what Brazil has done. But I think we're coming up to Brazil now. Wow, Brazil, here we are. So I did make a mistake on this program. I'll have to go back and update it. So that'll be one thing that I do when I finish this video. But you can see what Brazil did. They added an extra day, 2021, 01, 22, and they put lots of numbers in there. But I will have to go through, and now that we're looking at it, because that said US cases per million, and it should say BR. So we made a mistake here. So when I finish this video, I'll have to go through and change that. So that is a good thing about going through these code reviews, because when I go through the code reviews, then it gives me a chance to find mistakes that I've made, and then I can go through and correct those mistakes. So that's a plus. That's a bonus. Let's just see. Now what we're going to do is, since I've showed you Brazil and also showed you a mistake I made, I'm just going to talk about the US and the UK, because that's what we were talking about to begin with. So we've got your revised UK, and so we had to chop off the first 28 rows to make it work. And then we've got the revised US. And so we had to chop off the first 37 rows to make it work. But what we're going to do is we're going to look at Brazil. And because of what Brazil did, because Brazil added an extra day, we had to slice it. So we chopped off the first 2 rows and the last row to get it to work. And so you can see right here where we sliced it. Just took a slice of it. And so I'm not going to go over any of these others because I've gone over them in previous videos, and I don't want to, just spend a lot of time going over things that we've gone over before. And then here what we've done is I've had to create a lot of new variables so I can make data frames. So I made the data frame for the UK, where we've got the date and the new cases per million and the new deaths per million. And then we've got the data frame for the US, where we've got the date and the new cases per million and the new dates per million. And the same with the others, the same with the other countries that I was looking at. But I'm not going to go over that because it's just very time consuming. And we'll only go over it if it's something I'm doing. And then what we've done is we've compared, we made a file called compare, and we've merged all of these data frames together, and you can only merge 2 data frames together at one time, so we've got lots of merges. And now what we've done is we've gone back to see if there are any null characters in compare. You've got a lot of null characters in compare, so we replaced all of those null characters with 0, and the reason why is because all of those null characters were floats. And now what we want to do is we want to look at the statistics. We want to compare all of the variants. And at first I didn't have China in there because China is the first incidence of the virus, and I didn't put China in there because of they're just saying that they haven't had any new cases and they haven't had any new deaths, but it's just recently been in the news that China has having another lockdown, especially with Hong Kong. And so, but China's still not in there because they're very secretive. They're a very secretive country. That's all I'm going to say because I don't want to get involved in politics. But they're a very secretive country, and they don't really release their statistics. And but I did read in the news that they are having some more cases of the virus in China, and Hong Kong is having to have a lockdown now. But you can see different countries where we have variants. You've got variants in South Africa, UK, US, Nigeria, and Brazil. So you've got Nigeria, which is the lowest incidence of new cases and new deaths. And they say that because the average age of a typical Nigerian is 18, so their immune systems are better, so they're able to fight off the virus better than an older person. And the life expectancy of someone in Nigeria is 55, so they're not expected to live very long anyway. And South Africa is another African country where they have a variant, but you can see how the new cases went up, but now the new cases are going down, and the deaths. And then in South Africa, they're not really equipped to deal with all of these deaths, so they're having a shortage of coffins, is what I read in the news. And Brazil, so you still have a lot of new cases and new deaths, but it seems like the deaths are almost as much as the new cases if you look at the 2 charts. So we've got the US. The US is in green. So you've got a lot of new cases which seem to be leveling off, and you've got a lot of new deaths as well. And the UK is the one that is the most worrying because if you look at the UK, the new cases seem to be leveling off, but the new deaths are not leveling off. And that's why the authorities in the UK are saying that this UK variant of the virus is more deadly than the original virus. And you can look at that and see it by looking at the chart that we just created. And now what we're going to do is we're just going to go through the rest of the program, but we're going to go over it quickly because this is really just a comparison. Check nil values for the program, and then what we do is we impute the missing values with not listed, impute the categorical values with not listed, and then everything else we just replace it with 0. If it's a float and it's got a null value in it, we just replace it with 0. We ordinal encode all of the categorical columns. We define our X, our Y, and we've taken out a lot of columns dealing with new deaths and new cases. We've got our standard scaler, we've scaled it, and then we defined our X. We split our X and Y up into training and validation data sets. Select our model. In this case, it's HISC gradient boosting regressor. Had a 99.57% accuracy. We predict on the validation set. So, and you can see that. You can see the prediction is close to the actual values. We put the predictions in a data frame. And now what we have to do is we have to create a test set. So the test set that we're going to create is going to be on the next day. So this is the test set that we created. And we do exactly the same thing on this test set that we did on the train set. So we convert it to an integer. We check our null values. We do exactly the same thing that we did. We impute the missing values exactly the same way that we did it on the train test set. And then this is our test set, and you can see our test set. Ordinal encode the categorical columns. Define our X test. And then we predict on the test set, and then we've got the predictions. So that's it. That concludes this code review. And so when we did the code review, I found one mistake that I've made that I'm going to have to go through and correct. But I'm going to do a blog post on this, and when I do the blog post, you will be given a link to my GitHub account if you want the code for this. And this concludes my presentation. If you like my presentation, please like, subscribe, and share. If you want to keep receiving my videos, then please tap on the bell button next to the subscribe button, and you will receive a notification whenever I have made a new video. If you like the work I do and you want to support me, I've got my email address to my PayPal account in the description box below. Any donations are gratefully received because I don't have enough subscribers, which means that I can't monetize. And thank you so much for watching this video, and I look forward to making new videos for you in the future.